Minneapolis-based ministry, leading the largest student-led prayer and outreach efforts in America. Now, Nick, it's good to have you on the show, but primarily today you're going to talk about the cutting. Explain that to us, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad to be on the show with you guys here today. One of the prevalent issues facing today's youth is this overwhelming depression and suicide epidemic. And specifically, what we're seeing is that there's just so much self-harm going on. In America today, it's close to 5,000 teens and young adults that are committing suicide every year. And so this has just become a huge thing. And for every what they would call a successful suicide, there's over 30 what we would call failed attempts, where somebody is in the act of trying to commit suicide. And really one of the things that leads up to that is this self-harm, or something known as cutting, which is really become an epidemic. I'm a youth speaker. I travel all over the country. I speak to close to 1 million students a year. And I would say over the last 18 months, the number one issue that is being talked about and concerned about from today's youth is self-harm. Students coming up to me, showing me scars on their wrists or scars on their legs, or, just places where they're, dragging some sort of a sharp object against their skin and inflicting some sort of pain that they say in some way embodies the inner pain that they're feeling. They're manifesting outwardly, and they say there's some sort of a chemical release that happens that gives them sort of a feeling, an outward expression of their inner pain that somehow gives relief. And so this is a huge problem, and we're seeing it everywhere from coast to coast. Middle schoolers, teenagers, young adults. It's just something that's happening right in our backyards, and a lot of people don't even know about it.
Talking to Nick Hall. Nick is the founder and primary evangelist for Pulse, based in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. What does Pulse stand for?
Yeah, so Pulse is a student movement. Basically, our heart is to bring the message of Jesus to the very pulse of this generation. So, it's our passion to go to where the students are at. I mean, Pulse is about the heartbeat of culture and the heartbeat of God, and how do we bring the message of Jesus right there to the center of where people are at.
I want to ask you about this cutting thing that Jim talked about and that you described. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. I can understand people doing drugs and alcohol because it makes them feel high. It makes them feel good. I mean, it's self-destructive in the end, but at least temporarily, you get a little bit of euphoria from it. But getting a razor blade out and cutting your arm, and somebody had to start that. I mean, you know what I'm saying? That doesn't something that is natural. It's not, known to man. Somebody had to start that as a trend among the youth culture. So do these people, they cut themselves, these teenagers? I'm not trying to make light of the situation. I'm just saying, I can't wrap my head around this one.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I just turned 30. I've been married now 5.5 years. We just had our firstborn this summer, and I'll be honest, when I was a teenager, this was something that I didn't, it wasn't around. I mean, I remember
even 15 years ago, you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, 15 years ago. I mean, I remember there was one friend of mine who committed suicide, and it was it was just shocking. It was just absolutely shocking. I mean, our entire school gathered together. I was a sophomore in high school, and our entire school gathered together to talk about what had happened. And none of us had ever heard this before, like somebody, taking their life, a teenager, their whole life in front of them. But today, you can't find young people who don't know numerous friends who have committed suicide, and tons of their friends that are doing different forms of self-harm. Now, in the past, we would think of this in terms of, your anorexia or your bulimia, different kinds of ways that people are punishing themselves, to try to look a certain way. And I think with the advancement of social media now, what has happened is that something that one person finds to be helpful, even if it's the most horrific thing that we can imagine, can become a major phenomenon among youth and teens and even younger than that. I mean, but these students, I mean, literally what we've started doing at our events is we're setting up what we're calling reset bins. And basically what we're asking for is, and we're encouraging this to people is that, if there's an opportunity for you to have a fresh start in 2013, and not only that, but that God wants to give you a clean start. And part of that is inviting them to let go of whatever it is that has been in their life that, has been a negative influence. And I can't tell you, I mean, there's barely a night that goes by that people aren't coming in and dropping off out of their wallet or purse razor blades or paper clips or different sharp objects that they've been using, to cut themselves. So this is a real situation. This is happening. I mean, and I would say this isn't just your kids that are wearing all black and
right. It's not
eyeliner and whatever. These are preppy kids. These are athletes. These are youth group kids. This is just something that's going on, right beneath our noses. And like I said, I mean, so many people don't even know about it.
Talking to Nick Hall. Go ahead.
I was going to say, guys, this goes all the way back to the New Testament in Scripture, where you see the man that was possessed with the demon. So there is a supernatural aspect to this as well, that Satan continues to oppress children to the point that they feel like the only way they can get relief is through the cutting. And that's that's in Mark 5.
I mean, seriously, they think in their mind that if the way they get relief from the stress of life is to get a razor blade out and cut my arm.
The pain of the arm, and I've not nearly dealt with this as much as Nick has, but from what I've seen, the pain in the arm temporarily distracts them from the pain inside.
They got that much pain? And they cutting makes them feel better about their lives?
And
I'm not getting it.
Well, and as Nick says, he looks into the eyes of varying styles,
what if it's just
numerous
attention?
addictions.
Yeah. What
if
they just want attention?
Well, even
Nick?
looking, you can go to Yahoo, and here's a thing here on Yahoo from a child that says, I'm addicted to cutting, and I don't think I want to stop. So they've been depressed, and their parents they go to their parents for help, and the parent says, I made it through depression on my own. You can too.
Well, the first thing you do, kid, is stop cutting yourself.
Right.
That's step one. I don't know. I'm too much of a cynic here, Nick. You're going to have to help me have a little compassion. How do you help these kids, though, who are cutting themselves? How do you get them to stop?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for so many of these kids, it's giving them, it's trying to give them an identity of self-worth. I mean, we forget that, the average teenager and young person today isn't growing up in a two-parent home. I mean, they're growing up with one mom, one dad, and typically that adult or role model is working. They don't have a lot of positive influences or people that are speaking into their life, not to mention that such a high percentage of our teens and young people have experienced forms of emotional, physical, sexual abuse. All of these factors come together in the life of a young person to feel like nobody cares about them. They're not important. They don't measure up. And so really at the heart of it is it's an identity problem that they don't realize that they matter. And so when I interact with these young people, the primary message that I want them to get is that they matter to me. I mean, that's the reason I'm coming. And the reason that I'm coming is because they matter to God. But it's so important for adults and just different people who are, and if you're 18, 19, 20 years old, I mean, you're a role model to somebody,
Hey, Nick, Nick, you've written on this. I want, before people, we got about 6 or 7 minutes to go. People might say, well, I know a parent who a friend of mine who has a kid who does this, or there's a kid at our youth group, or there's a kid at school. And like, they may be like me, they're woefully ignorant of all. I don't know what's going on. I'm not woefully ignorant. I knew what was going on. I've heard of cutting,
Right.
but I the reasons for it
Just can't get around it. Can't understand
still
why.
bizarre. But where can people go and read about this who want to know more about this phenomena?
For sure, yeah. I mean, I've written an article, a number of articles on our website, pulsemovement.com. There's also an article that recently was picked up by a number of the news syndicates online, and it was just titled, What I Want Parents to Know About Cutting.
Where is that? Where can you read that? At your website?
Yeah, you can find that at Pulse Movement. You can also find it on Fox News, I believe Yahoo. I mean, if you just do a Google search for What I Want Parents to Know About Cutting, what parents to know about teens and cutting, it'll come up. That was just a simple, basically just as a response. I have been so shocked as a youth communicator with this, and I've just been amazed by just the lack of awareness and the lack of content that's out there for adults and parents. It's just not. This isn't something that people are talking about, and yet it is just. This is one of the epidemics of our day. That these kids are just. This is what's going on right now, and so it is just. It's so important, and what you'll find in the article is just practical. Being open, being real, being available to our youth, letting them know that they matter, that they have worth, spending time with them, speaking into their life, words of life. Everywhere around them, they're getting words of death and discouragement and comparison.
I want people to realize, excuse me for interrupting, but we're running short of time here, and Nick, I wanted to quote from your article that you're referencing here, because I want people to understand how serious a problem this is. Nick Hall, our guest here, writes in the column he just mentioned. He says, among the trends millennials face, and that's the younger generation, under 30 or under 25, I am most overwhelmed. This is Nick talking here, writing. I am most overwhelmed by the cutting epidemic that is growing exponentially. In the United States, it's estimated that 1 in every 200 girls between the ages of 13 and 19 years old, or 0.5% cut themselves regularly, according to teenhelp.com. And according to Scott Counseling, 40% of individuals who commit self-injury are males. The youth of our nation are hurting from the inside out. So in the U.S., it's estimated that 1 in every 200 between the ages of 13 and 19, that would be 0.5%. That's a staggering number that would cut themselves, are into this. So this is you call it an epidemic.
Absolutely. I do believe it's an epidemic, and frankly, I think the statistics that are out there are so outdated because it is growing so quickly that I think the stats are probably 3, 4, 5, even 10 times that now. When those statistics were pulled. I mean, because like I said, I just this past weekend I spoke to probably 40,000 young people, different cities in the U.S. And these kids. It is without fail the stories that are coming up. If I even post something, just as an example, I can post on a number of different issues on my social media outlets, whether it's Twitter or Facebook. And I'll regularly get a couple hundred responses. When I post on self-harm, when I post on cutting, when I post on, just these issues specifically, the responses are exponentially. It's in the thousands, and it's just like it just opens up this floodgate of just emotion and self-expression and vulnerability, and and it's either two sides. One is people just being completely real, that's me, that's where I'm at. And then the other side of it is those who have been there and are now out of it, that they line up to say thank you for talking about this because nobody is talking about it.
You're listening to Today's Issues, and we're talking with Nick Hall. Pardon me for interrupting you, Nick. I want to give folks your website again because we are coming up on the end of the show. Pulsemovement.com, pulsemovement.com. And the last couple of years, Nick